Hello, thank you so much for clicking on my video. But guess what? This is part two of a few part series. So if you didn't watch part one, go watch that because I filmed this and it was all supposed to be one video. So if you don't watch part one, you're going to be confused why it doesn't feel like its own separate video because it was all filmed as one video. Thanks for coming to see the show. Enjoy. Four movies, four different directors, titans from our age-old past, reborn and reconstructed for a new generation. This is Legendary's Monsterverse So Far. So, Godzilla 2014, despite garnering a mixed reaction from fans and critics alike, what wasn't mixed was the giant boat of money it made, a lot of which was my own money, of course. I saw it 5 times. It was a very exciting year. All the while, that same summer at San Diego Comic-Con, it turned out that Legendary Pictures was deciding that they were going to be developing a King Kong prequel that would take place on Skull Island and maybe address some of the intricacies and mysteries that we've never heard about it. And of course, this was originally meant to be a prequel to the Peter Jackson 2005 film. Of course, that didn't really work out as soon as Godzilla came stomping into theaters. At that point, everything became clear. Let them fight. And Legendary was initially going to do this with Universal distributing, but soon as Godzilla came out, that wasn't a thing anymore. They switched on over to Warner Brothers, and all of a sudden, it looks like we're gonna get ourselves a King Kong prequel, and in the very near future, they're gonna fight. These are all very, very exciting ideas to me. It was soon announced that the film would be helmed by the wildly talented Jordan Voght Roberts, director of the indie darling Kings of Summer, as well as Nick Offerman, American Ham. That he is, and you should all watch Devs. The man deserved a Golden Globe. The man deserved an Emmy. The man deserved way more than none of you watching Devs. So, Kong Skull Island. What is my personal story with this? What is my take? Well, this goes a little deeper than the romantic love affair I had with Godzilla in 2014, as when I saw Kong Skull Island, it was my third date that I had with my now wife. We had recently come back into each other's lives after meeting each other 2 years beforehand, and it became clear really quickly that my wife Kristen was the ultimate movie-going partner, to the point where she would even sit at an AMC with the stinky old me for 2 hours in a line waiting for a week-early screening of Kong Skull Island. We weren't even technically dating quite yet. We were still just kind of friends getting to know each other, and my God was I enjoying getting to know her, to the point where if you've ever been to a movie screening, you know the waiting for that is the most egregiously boring boredom you will ever experience in your life. And my friends wouldn't even go with me most of the time, so I was typically alone at these. Now I have this beautiful woman and she's here and I'm hanging on her every word, and we just keep on talking and talking and talking. Suddenly the lady comes next to me and she's all like, "You ready to go into the movie?" And I'm like, maybe not. Maybe I don't need to see Kong Skull Island. Maybe I just need to stare at this lady for a little second. Luckily enough for the both of us, Kong was able to swoop us in very quickly. I mean, this movie was right off the bat non-stop fun, thrills. I mean, every monster scene was brutal and badass to a point I'd never seen before. It's just a pleasure of a film. One that I don't know if I completely even took in at the time, just because of how excited I was to be there with the love of my life. But I'm a big boy now. I'm married, I have thick curly locks, and I've seen Kong Skull Island 3 times. So what do I think about it now? What's the new opinion? What's the one that's not the one, the review where I reviewed this and I came in with a guitar and I think I played Back in Black? There's the monkey, there's a monkey, here's a Bowser. I thought this meme was really funny. Is it working? Is it working? I'm getting the sign that it's not working. It's kind of ironic to think Godzilla came in the beginning of the Captain Vitus show and Kong Skull Island came out right in the ass end of it. But now, at the time, of course, I was a bit preoccupied, so I thought the movie was good. I thought it was fine. I didn't really give it much thought. But what do I think now? I can tell you this much is a hell of a lot easier to focus, and I would fight to the death for this movie. Maybe not to the death, because I wouldn't want to die, because I love this movie too much, and if I died, I wouldn't be able to watch it anymore. I genuinely believe Kong Skull Island is the best thing that has ever happened to the likes of the King Kong franchise. This is a movie that goes the full mile to give this magnificent movie icon the story and characterization he's always deserved. And to get to the bottom of that, we got to go back to the dawn of time. Oh wait, my bad, I misread that. 1933. Sometimes my glasses are a bit foggy. In 1933, the world wasn't ready for what the moving pictures had planned for them when the original King Kong released. It really changed everything. This was the kind of movie that made people want to make movies. It promised them things that they had never seen before and then proceeded to deliver on that promise, creating perhaps the most significant visual effects spectacle of all time. And beyond just its stamp on filmmaking in general, King Kong was monumental in the world of monster movies, directly inspiring both the beast from 20,000 Fathoms as well as the Big G himself. That's right, if it weren't for Mr. Monkey over here, we probably would have never gotten Big Lizard. It's a shame that Big Lizard kinda took the whole movie thing a little better though, huh? Unlike Godzilla, Kong would go on to have a bit more of a messy legacy than he would have hoped for. Like, you can say all you want about the bad Godzilla movies, but like, there's almost 40 of them. There's only 12 Kong movies, and the majority of them are bad. Apparently, I have, technically speaking, only seen 3 of these films, that being the original King Kong, the original King Kong vs. Godzilla, and of course, the 2005 King Kong, which, yo, you bring 10-year-old me to see 2005 King Kong, be ready for a traumatized boy for a few months afterwards, because that movie did not sit well with me. The big point being, while the original King Kong is a visual effects masterpiece, it's near impossible to watch some of the other parts. I lived to see all those amazing claymated dinos, but oh my god, the 30s. I understand, it's the 30s, they didn't know any better, I don't know. It's a pinnacle of cinema, but it doesn't exactly have the gravitas the original Godzilla has. Like, that's a movie about something, a real thing that happened to a nation of people, and this movie has this character. It's not fair, because at the end of the day, the monkey didn't do anything wrong. That was just people's, which is why it's upsetting that for all his legacy, I have to keep watching him fall off buildings because Jack Black was like, oh yeah, bring Big Monkey to the city. The real point is that King Kong, while an icon, has become a bit stagnant. Despite the Peter Jackson movie being really super good and giving me nightmares for 2 months, and I swear I screamed when I saw that Jack Black was hosting the Kids' Choice Awards. Now, this was a little before Nacho Libre, so I wasn't exactly learning to love Jack Black yet. I was having PTSD from that giant monkey and the dinosaurs, and oh my god, that one guy got his head smashed in. Ooh, why did they? Ooh. Basically, Kong is old and we know what to expect. Unrequited romance, followed by tragedy. My man is always dying for people who don't give a shit about him. Well, no fucking longer, because here is Kong Skull Island. Kong Skull Island is the movie this monkey has been waiting for his whole life. No longer are we given the same drawn-out plot. Instead, we are brought into the magical world of the 70s, specifically directly after the end of the Vietnam War, where we are introduced to the character of Bill Randa, played brilliantly by John Goodman, who just so happens to be the current head of Monarch. He recruits a diverse team of people, from scientists to soldiers to trekkers to photographers to other monkeys, in a rush to go to Skull Island and get proof of things beyond our greatest comprehension. which they do, but it's at the expense of their lives. Jordan Voght Roberts didn't see the point in remaking a movie that had been remade over and over again. He wasn't about reinventing this for reinvention's sake. He wanted it to have a genuine reason to exist, and because of that, Skull Island is easily the most unique Kong movie of the whole bunch, besides maybe the one where he fights the robot version of himself. I am not sure. I have not yet to see it. When asked about what he envisioned this fresh take on King Kong being, the image of helicopters against a big orange sun-kissed sky, dwarfed by the king himself standing in front of the sun like a god, came to mind. And talk about bringing visions to life, because wow, that's a good shot in the movie. It's in the movie. It's right there. He loved the idea of fusing this monster movie with a 70s Vietnam War film, as we've seen a million of those, but not a one of this nature. He wanted something that looked completely new and used that element of the Vietnam War to tell a fresh, and more importantly than anything, meaningful story that didn't revert back to the old Beauty and the Beast tale of so many movies before it. It had to be a spectacle, a breath of fresh air, and it had to say something. This thinking is my favorite kind of thinking, and it's why Jordan is one of my favorite filmmakers working today. I am genuinely obsessed with this man, and he's really inspiring me to do all of the same things. Jordan, if you're watching this, I'm going to beg you to hire me for any job at all. I'll be your best boy. I'll be your boom operator. I don't care. I love you. So that 70s setting, let's talk about it, because it's not exactly here for the sake of aesthetic, and it's also not exactly here for the sake of nostalgia. Jordan wanted to bring us back to a time where myth still existed. In the 1933 film, it was 1933, and we were scared of everything, including each other. So, of course, the giant monkey fit the bill. But by the 70s, we had developed a long way as a species, and not all for the better. We were at a time where science was developing further than we could have ever anticipated, and some of the biggest questions we ever had were getting answers. Their mysteries becoming complete, all the while our war-angry nature had driven us to conquer our Earth with weapons and technology. Because of this, Jordan viewed Skull Island as this mythical sanctuary untouched by man. A place where gods lived and walked around and sometimes ate each other. Really ever reminding our characters just how out of their element they are. And as I said, it's also set directly after the end of the Vietnam War, and not just for the sake of that Vietnam War movie aesthetic, but mainly for the sake of the movie's sole themes. The Vietnam War was a completely demoralizing time for humanity. It made the world a darker place and tested the limits of the evil that men do, leaving the ones who were sent to fight it lost, broken, and scarred beyond repair, wondering if there was any significance to the endless and thoughtless violence they had seen and been a part of. And I would know this speaking as the son of a Vietnam War vet. My father, who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago due to dementia that was brought on by PTSD from the war. The Vietnam War sucked. There was no reason to fight it. It was literally just evil, and I miss my dad, especially since he would have loved this movie. Going back to the themes of human arrogance Godzilla explored, the human versus nature story this presents is one that arguably goes farther just through how it melds its themes differently into its large cast of characters. Something Kong Skull Island is frequently criticized for is its massive cast of characters and how stupid they are and how they're all a bunch of big bimbos, and that's a criticism that makes me feel sick to my stomach. More than any other film we're going to be talking about today, Kong Skull Island understands character. Yes, there's this massive cast of humans. Yes, there isn't enough time in the movie to fully explore all of them. Yes, there is a 3-hour cut hidden away that none of us can get because you're not asking for it. I'm asking for it, but I can't be doing all the heavy lifting. And also, yes, there are a lot of themes in this movie, and they need that massive cast of characters to properly explore each one of them. And instead of just talking about the individual characters, let's talk about how they form into different teams in this movie to represent different ways man reacts to nature, God, a giant monkey. We are presented with people from all different aspects of life here, so it's safe to say we get the full experience. Now, the characters in this film are divided by how they choose to use their humanity to react to the island, to Kong, to the reason for Kong, etc. We see this in the Cool Guys group, which is led by Tom Hiddleston's James Conrad, Brie Larson's Mason Weaver, as well as John C. Reilly's Hank Marlowe. These characters all come into this situation from different places of mind and war. Conrad starting off the movie as a pessimistic soldier taking an easy paycheck after coming home from the war, only to find his apathetic ways challenged and changed by the nature and mythology he witnesses. He finds his lost humanity and is able to reconcile with the horrors of the last few years of his life in the war. He's that kind of leading man you'd expect to see in a King Kong movie, except at his core, he's not. Mason Weaver is an anti-war photographer fresh off the front lines of Vietnam herself, a person who understands the importance of documentation and how it can shape our view of history. Brought onto our mission here to document what's sure to be the adventure of a lifetime, only to find out, like Conrad, she is a lost soul looking for her place and purpose in the world. After what she's been through, she doesn't think there's anything left to surprise her until the nature of the island proves her wrong and gives her a new reason to fight for her beliefs. Then we come down to Hank Marlowe, who's been on this island longer than anyone in the crew, crash landing during a dogfight with a Japanese fighter pilot in the Second World War. Hank, without a doubt, is the heart of the film, and his development is kind of the thesis for the movie in a way. After crash landing, Hank and the Japanese fighter pilot that lands with him, named Gunpei, immediately are like, okay, let's finish killing each other. Before, of course, the king himself shows up, and the sight of his sheer godliness alone is able to immediately quell the two's fight. The sight of the true power of nature renders the idea of human hatred in war insignificant. Through this, of course, he befriends Gunpei all the way to his death, and both of them are taken in by the native Iwi tribe, who teaches them of the magnificent island they've been marooned on. Because of this, by the time our main cast reaches the island, he's already been here for like 30 years. So he gets all of it. He has a full understanding of the island, its hierarchy, and of course Kong's place and importance in its survival. These characters are all lost in their own humanity, searching for that something to wake them up inside, and they find it in the beauty of Kong and the home he protects. They embrace nature, truly understand its madness, and through that, they learn the depths of their own humanity and vow to use it to protect the island and its inhabitants. Now we move on to the next group, Team Science. Yay! The reason we're all stranded here. We of course have to start with Bill Randa, who is played by the always fabulous John Goodman. You might have heard of him. He was on Roseanne. I watched a lot of Roseanne. Randa is a man not so unlike Kong's protagonists of old. Each of those movies had their crazy director who was like, come on, say hi to the nice dinosaur so we can make some pictures. In this, of course, he isn't a director of film, but he is the current director of Monarch, and he works in the same respect. He comes from a time of mystery and wonder, so the 70s being the time where mystery and wonder seem to be coming to their end, what else could the world possibly surprise us with? He is obsessed with answering that question with proof, even if he has to endanger an entire crew of people to do it. On top of that, at this point in Monarch's career, they aren't exactly getting funded for Avengers jets like they will in the next movie we talk about. No, we were more so going the way of ye old borders, and we were going to get replaced by the government equivalent of Amazon or Barnes & Noble or something that wasn't going to haunt monsters. So the point is, my man is obsessed with the truth. He doesn't care what he's got to do to find it, because he's got to find it. Monarch depends on it. His work depends on it. Maybe humanity depends on it? There's a real apathy to the way he goes about getting this done. We aren't doing this for the love of giant monkeys everywhere. We aren't going to shoot King Kong Sports Illustrated issue. What we are going to do is shoot giant bombs into the surface of the island to map the place out, which of course kills a lot of cute non-mutated deer and also wakes up a certain someone. We'll get to that scene in a second. This obsession and disregard for safety is what ends up becoming his fatal flaw, and unlike asshole Carl Denham, who gets everyone killed, then gets some more people killed, then basically gets a giant monkey killed before blaming it on Ann Darrow, and then he gets to show up in the sequel and hang out with Kong's son as if he didn't do anything to his dad. John Goodman does not get to reap his discoveries in the same fashion. Turns out, obsession with discovering the unknown, unchecked, that'll get you eaten, dude.
Oh, shit.
His character is joined by a group of his own with Houston Brooks, played by Corey Hawkins, and San Lin, played by Jing Tian. They come with Randa to help in his quest, but they come from a place of pure science, whereas Randa comes from a place somewhere between science and belief. The nature of the island affects them differently as well. Breaking the shells of what their science has told them is possible and what isn't possible, which in the end gives them a greater respect for the island, as well as their beliefs of their now late colleague. Then you have Neves, who's played by John Ortiz, who you would probably know from everything. He's in everything. This guy believes that myths are just stories we create to explain the unexplainable. Once you discover a myth, you can understand it and it loses that mystery. Which of course is not the case on Skull Island, where myth presents itself to you, you scream in cosmic horror, and then myth turns into a scissor pterodactyl and slices you up in the sky. Oh, you hate to see it. Okay, well, it was pretty brutal. I kind of liked watching it, but the point stands. For these characters, their connections to science and understanding are brought into disarray at the nature discovered on this island, and for some of them, that leads to their demise, where others embrace nature and join the fight to protect it. Then we have our last group, the Sky Devils, a helicopter battalion straight out of the Vietnam War. We meet them as the war is over and they are getting ready to head home after years of hell when this one last mission comes across their desk. One last time into the fray, let's make some money. And it really is supposed to be that last easy job. These characters have seen some shit, the true depths of what humanity is capable of. Not exactly a group who is ready to be introduced back into the normal world. You know, here's a chance to go to a place not so unlike the one they just left, and all they gotta do is protect some photographers? I mean, this was supposed to be a vacation. Of course, this isn't the case, and as soon as they arrive on the island and start bombing it for the sake of science, they learn right away that they are completely out of their depth. This isn't the vacation from war, this is a new war that they are in no way prepared for. Kong decimates them. Little planes may have took down the original one, but this guy versus helicopters far beyond the capabilities of those original killer planes? Absolutely no match for the king. After this, we see how the remaining battalion reacts to the nature before their eyes, and they do so in the only way they know how. With violence! Of course, it's not that black and white though, as it leads different characters down different paths. Some aren't up to the challenge at all and become easy targets. Characters like Mills and Slivko, played by Jason Mitchell and Thomas Mann, react in shock initially. Blindly loyal to their lieutenant, they follow him on his revenge quest and react to all signs of nature with their gun in hand until the end, where they have to look deep inside themselves and where they have been for the past few years and what they've become because of it, leading to them going to Kong's cause. Then you have Cole, played by Shea Wiggum, a character completely broken and demoralized after his time in the war, his will to live hanging on by a thread. The nature that greets them on the island does nothing to help this, only driving him more into a state of helplessness where even a heroic act of courage ends up being thwarted by the uncaring force of nature. Nature in this case being the tail of a giant lizard demon. But this crew is of course nothing without possibly the most interesting character in the entire movie, Preston Packard, played by the one and only Samuel L. Jackson. The role was initially meant for J.K. Simmons, which would have been interesting, but I don't know guys, this might be my favorite Sam Jackson performance in years. War is all Packard knows anymore. He has been crippled from the inside by it. By the end of the war, he still feels like they aren't done, that they've abandoned their post and they need to get back, an attitude that carries with him all the way over to Skull Island. And of course, by the time his men have been wasted by Kong, he sees nothing but vengeance. He's absolutely blinded by it. It's like he didn't hear a goddamn thing he said to Anakin all those years beforehand. Anakin couldn't get in for like a single impure thought. This motherfucker's trying to kill a monkey. Sorry. This character addresses the monsters beyond anything we see walking around Skull Island, instead addressing the monsters that exist within our own humanity. The conflict of the responsibility over our own human nature and how blurry that line becomes in the pursuit of human domination over Mother Nature. Packard was shattered by the Vietnam War. Outside of his battalion, he is all alone. All he knows is fighting. It's what's been bred into him by the war. His motto is no man left behind, and on his first flight into this last mission, he loses almost his entire battalion to an incomprehensible foe. His story is a Moby Dick-esque one. It takes no time at all on the ground for his entire end goal for this mission to be kill the monkey. I don't care what it takes. I don't care who he is. I don't care that he only attacked us after we bombed his home. If you dare attack me and my humanity after I attack you first, then I'm just going to attack you even harder the next time. Nature works as the resolving factor for these characters' previous trauma, whether that is seen through a personal epiphany or a giant fist. Humanity is something significant. We can think, speak, make IKEA furniture, but there is a darkness inside of us, all of us. It's inherent. Since the dawn of man, we have dominated the natural world and placed it under our thumb with little to no respect for the nature that had been around for longer than we could even imagine. That humanity is thrown into disarray at the idea of something so significant it renders us in the same perspective of ants. I mean, don't get me wrong, ants are hype. They're super intelligent, they work in teams to create their society, but that's rendered nothing as soon as one kid decides he has a full bladder. And I want to talk about the nature now in the form of Skull Island's inhabitants because it's a fully realized lost world. They enter it through a storm not aesthetically unsimilar from the one we Halo jumped through in Godzilla, and are swept away into a world of live-action Pokemon beyond anything you've ever seen before. The island itself is presented almost as a character of its own, endlessly complex and always ready to surprise you with both its incomparable beauty as well as its incomprehensible danger. So let's talk about that, and to do that, of course, we get to talk about the actual best character in the movie, this one right here. His name is Kong. Have you heard of him? No longer the big gorilla of old, he is now taller than ever and he's got good ass posture. I mean, look at that upright position. It was important that this Kong was less so depicted as just a giant gorilla and more so like a giant Neanderthal who is also a gorilla. This goes into how he is portrayed as well. Kong is a legitimate character in this film with a lot of complexity. He begins the film not unlike Godzilla as our biggest threat and invincible god beyond comprehension with a merciless savagery, but he isn't that way for long. We find out quickly about Kong's significance on the island. He's the last of his kind. His parents were killed by the skull crawlers, which by the way, did I mention the skull crawlers, these evil demon lizards that live in the Earth's core? That's not fun. Now Kong is here to keep those things in the ground, in their place, before they're able to go on a rampage through the island, something passed down to him by his parents, a crown of sorts for a younger Kong, who comes off more in this movie as a prince in training. There is an attempt to humanize him without losing his natural animal instincts, and Jordan clearly took inspiration from the video game Shadow of the Colossus, which if you haven't played, you should. Right now it's on PS4. Anyways, in that game you play as a character who must find and kill a number of giant colossi in order to bring your girlfriend out of her coma. The twist, of course, being that the Colossus are, for the most part, just gentle, lumbering, godlike figures who only attack you after you've attacked them first. Kong definitely takes from that as he doesn't fuck with the humans unless they fuck with him. For the most part, he remains unaware of our existence until we make ourselves known. Basically, no one had to die here. You didn't have to threaten the giant monkey. You could have invited him to a game of Yahtzee instead. Of course, I would be amiss to forget to mention that in Shadow of Colossus, there is this one Colossi who I thought was a total dick, and I felt no shame in killing him, no guilt at all. In fact, it felt good. And that kind of goes into the antagonists. Remember them skull crawlers I talked about? Well, let's talk about them more. Now, what does King Kong do? We've already mentioned a lot of his things, but one of the things I didn't mention is he typically fights a big old T-Rex, and we have seen that fight only a million times over and over and over again. So for this one, once again, we wanted to do something a little different, and to do that, Jordan Voght Roberts actually looked at the original King Kong and saw this one creature. It was like this big lizard, and from the looks of it, it almost looked like it didn't have a bottom, like legs. didn't have a bottom half, didn't have legs. And of course, through this inspiration, the skull crawlers were born. And now the skull crawlers are scarier than any other monster in the Monsterverse, and I think if I placed a bet on that, I would win. I mean, like, they are genuinely horrifying. They are lizards with demon skulls, and they go, It is literally the worst possible thing you could ever run into, maybe ever. Where Kong is a complex character who contains true sympathy and heart, like real fucking emotion. Just look at the way he's looking at Brie Larson. He's saying so much with just one big ass eyeball. The skull crawlers, on the other hand, are pure evil incarnate, the real case of you shouldn't have come here in this movie. And of course, the nature doesn't end with them. I can't say it enough, man. The original King Kong gets brownie points with me for all the dinosaurs. Love dinosaurs, almost was a paleontologist. We already kind of talked about that. What I love even more is that instead of falling back on those old dinosaurs of the past, Jordan and his team of massively talented concept artists were able to create a Pokemon world for Kong to live in, and each creature is a treat and brings something new to the world of Skull Island. Some are gentle like Kong, only aggressive if threatened like that grass-type water buffalo, or the pseudo-wudo that Toby Kebbell sits on. But then, of course, some are giant spider crabs who hang atop bamboo forests, and I've mentioned the scissor pterodactyls. Now, those are just the ones that made the cut. If you go buy yourself this boy, you can see that there was even more Pokemon available in all this concept art that didn't get to be revealed. Once again, I ask why you all aren't joining me in the quest for the 3-hour cut where Tom Hiddleston gets to fight a giant snake. I mean, this is just beyond impressive. They build an entire ecosystem with an entire way of life, its own food chain, which is just impressive as hell and works especially for a movie that's about trying to live alongside nature instead of dominating it, something shown through the Iwi tribe depicted in the movie. One of the important things this film wanted to distance itself from were the racist implications of the tribespeople in the original film, and then the remakes, and then the other remake, and honestly, we haven't been good at this at all. I don't care the excuses of the time and whatnot. It's hard to look away from this as a fan of the character because it will always be a part of this glaring history. Commonly, Kong's tribe people are presented as murderous savages who steal our pure white women to sacrifice to their god. You can say it's just the 30s, but it's clearly a depiction that has lived on to this day, painting real tribes people, African Bushmen in particular, as the kinds of mindless savages that we see on our screens when the truth couldn't be farther. And this is an inherent part of the history of one of cinema's most beloved wonders, and it was time for a change. In Kong Skull Island, we are introduced to the Iwi, a native people who live in a functioning society alongside the monsters of the island. Still here are, of course, the Great Wall that was used to keep Kong at bay in the original films, this time used to keep the skull crawlers out. This is not the tribe of savages looking to sacrifice Brie Larson to their ape god as you might have anticipated. They see Kong for who he is, the balance and protector of Skull Island, a necessity that they leave undisturbed so you know he can actually do his job. They're actually pretty considerate. Jordan went to a lot of depths to develop them as well, even going as far as to work with his team on creating their own unique alphabet and putting a ton of time into getting those costumes right as to make them feel like a unique and tangible part of this universe. Also, he was really obsessed with making that camouflage painting scene, like beyond obsessed. He wanted people to blend in with the wall, and my God, did he do it. It's just really nice to see a movie about King Kong work so hard just to give you something completely unique that on the one hand, shocks and awes you after years of seeing the same story remade over and over again, rights the wrongs of the past as best it can, and builds a true man versus nature story that addresses all different wakes of life. We are what we put into the world. If we put peace and understanding into it, we can live alongside nature, even be one with it. But if we try to fight it, at the end of the day, no matter how much damage we can inflict on nature, we can't defeat it. And the damage it inflicts on us in return is damage we are not ready for. Now, on top of all of this, I want to get gooey on one more little aspect of the film before we finish up with Kong here, and that is just the filmmaking in general, because I've said it once, I'll say it again. I'm obsessed with Jordan Voght Roberts. I'm obsessed with his vision. If you're watching, please hire me. I mean, this is a monster movie and the effects are practically invisible. If you were like me and thought, what can they possibly do to surprise me after Godzilla? Jordan heard you and he went the full mile to create that visual vision. This starts with the environments, and like Godzilla, this movie was mainly shot out in the real world. Skull Island is made up of scenery from Hawaii, Australia, and most importantly, Vietnam, which in particular has never been shot on film before to the extent that this movie does. You're gonna be watching this movie in awe of its natural beauty, and that's because it is natural beauty. I mean, these are places that have never been filmed before. Now, this is the true King Kong shit. This is real mystery, real wonder. This is the real big deal. Jordan even ended up falling so in love with Vietnam, after production was finished, he just moved there. And he lived there until he was in a very unfortunate bar brawl that he did not want to be a part of. That's a very interesting story. If you want to look that up, be my guest. The real wonder, of course, goes on to be complemented by some of the most astounding visual effects work I've ever seen. If these Monsterverse movies are anything, they are spectacle unlike any other. And they don't even try to hide it like most monster films do with like nighttime and whatnot. Most of this film is shot in complete daylight, including our final fight between Kong and Skullcrawler number 0. Jordan is someone whose visual style speaks to his background of anime and video game fandom, which of course makes him a very attractive filmmaker to follow for me, who has the same background and also wants to bring that style to my own eventual films. But it also makes for the best looking King Kong movie to ever exist ever. And you can fight me on that genuinely. This is shown in the magnificent use of color throughout the film. There is so much vibrance here, and I'll never get over that orange Apocalypse Now sun with my man Kong in the middle of it. Also, don't even get me started on Tom Hiddleston walking through a 4th of July show cutting up scissor dactyls with a fucking katana. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. That's something he just thought. He was like, I'm going to get you a katana and you're going to cut pterodactyls. And on that, we also see it in the glorious action sequences, like the one I just mentioned, or even the one I mentioned a second ago where Kong fights the big skull crawler. Kong is shown in this film as a being smart enough to see a giant branch and know he can use that as a sword or hook the motherfucker with a boat propeller. And of course the visual effects for the creatures are astounding. Kong has that Donkey Kong tropical freeze fur.
You can even see Donkey Kong's fur flowing like this.
I watched the making of, and it looks exhausting to put together, but he looks amazing and was brought to life through motion capture work done by Terry Notary with help from cast member and fellow ape man Toby Kebbell, which means both Caesar and Koba have now helped to bring a version of Kong to life. So I guess it's time for the orangutan next. There are certain shots of the skull crawlers as well that even make me feel like, is this even CGI? Did you get a real creature? Because you might want to run. That's the scariest thing I've ever seen. Remember the scene where he's eating the grass buffalo? Yeah, I remember it too, mainly because I probably put it up there. It's a visual spectacle that honors the visual spectacle to end all visual spectacles. The original King Kong that blew everyone in the 30s away with its groundbreaking stop motion effects that started the careers of so many people behind the scenes of your favorite films. Skull Island is that and so much more, because on top of being pretty, it has something to say too about man's dominance over nature and the terror that overcomes us when that dominance is questioned by a power uncomprehendable to our own. It rights the wrong of an almost 100-year-old past and finally gives the king of movie monsters the story he deserves. I mean, he is the king, right?